Hello, and welcome to this talk in the ALAC speaker series. ALAC stands for the Association for Informal Logic and Critical Thinking, and I am Donna Warren, Vice President of ALAC. It is my great pleasure today to introduce M. Neil Browne, who has an extensive history teaching, speaking, publishing about things related to critical thinking. And he is here to talk to us today about friendly critical thinking, replacing domination with collaboration. So I will turn it over to you, Neil.
First, some context for what I have to say. Yesterday in the New York Times, there was a David Brooks essay that I recommend to all of you. You won't feel good after you read it, but nevertheless, sometimes we need to read things that we don't want to read. So what Brooks' essay is about is the effect on our society of having people focusing on screens, but not in an engaged way, but rather flicking back and forth across screens. And he correlated the amount of time that people spend on screens with the decline in several kinds of measures of educational attainment, particularly with really young people. And he talked about how some professors had recalled from the early parts of their career when they could discuss a book, uh, Crime and Punishment. And now that would be hopeless because the students would say, oh, it's too hard, it's too big, and so what he did in his essay was he collected evidence about the extent to which people were having trouble reading at all, the extent to which, even if they weren't having trouble, they didn't want to read. Reading levels are way down in terms of quality and quantity, and people's ability to even know they're involved in an argument, something that has reasons or at least some epistemological anchor. There's no feeling of I can't wait to read my next book. And he concludes this rather abysmal tonal essay by saying uh, civilization was really productive. Goodbye, civilization. And that's hyperbolic, but it's feeling closer and closer to what he's saying. I wanted to begin today by talking about a series of apologies that I want to give you. There are three of them. The first is, I wish I were somebody more skilled than I am. I wish I were somebody who didn't make a large number of mistakes. I wish that I were somebody who not only knew what a number of cognitive biases are, but more frequently than not, I wish that I didn't let those biases affect my reasoning. I fight that fight, I often lose. I also wish that my perceptions created inferences that flowed logically from those perceptions, but often my perceptions are askew. Often my perceptions are, by me, overrated in terms of their inferential quality. And I also wish that I were more statistically adept. I've had 3 courses in statistics, and yet there's a number of areas of scholarship that I can't partake of because I don't have the statistical background to do it. So I want to say to you, I'm sorry, but I make a lot of mistakes, and I don't feel good about that, but I'm okay with that. I have no choice. Second mistake that I want to talk.
To do screen share from screen show.
My wife's coaching me. What?
Screen show from beginning.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Well, you got it anyway. So.
Yeah. Um, to say you make a lot of mistakes is easy to say, but do you feel that? And do you feel that as a result, you need to listen a lot more than your tendencies are? For me, I talk too much. I listen not enough. There are scholars who measure statistics. They measure statistics specifically of how many mistakes people make each day. And I've seen when people use a very elastic concept of what a mistake is, they sometimes will say, "Oh, we make 400 mistakes a day. We make." This is the most conservative estimate that I found, that we make 50 mistakes each day. Uh, Let me talk to you about some of the best research there is, medical research. And John Ioannidis has made a whole career out of arguing that much of what is published in Lancet and New England Journal of Medicine and the AMA, much of that is within 3 years, it has been replicated and found to be untrue. And the point that I'm trying to make in talking about having a certain tolerance for the frailty of our reasoning is because uh, to me, the primary portal to critical thinking that I'm interested in is humility. And it's not a humility that necessarily means that we don't take positions or that we don't aggressively, but politely and civilly, let's hope, uh, uh, advance positions that we have. No, not at all. It's just that we listen and we realize that when we encounter arguments, there is a period in which we want to play what Peter Elbow calls the believing game, and there's time when we want to play the critical game. So the idea of announcing in advance that you make many mistakes is to say up front, I want to hear you. I may not like what I hear, but I'm going to try very hard to listen. Part of the problem of toleration for mistakes is that human beings, as Mark Lilla points out, they love ignorance. And so they're not bothered by mistakes in a sense that they don't see them as problematic, because the conclusions that you have at the moment, they're your conclusions and you don't want to give them up. That ignorance is calming. It's not the stimulus to learning that we'd like to think of it, but that it's often for many people, it's a reflection of wanting not to know that they have problems in their thinking. And that's a huge problem for you and me, because if people don't see themselves as having human frailties, then why should they pay attention to people who talk about critical thinking? As I talk longer in the next few minutes about the extent to which people are not really bothered by their ignorance, I think it's really important for us to recognize that people are not waiting in line to hear talks about critical thinking, but they're waiting in line for a lot of things. And those are our competitors for time and devotion to trying to improve the quality of your thinking, as opposed to going to the football game. More about that later. Without a large dose of humility, there is, on many of our parts, a confusion between arrogance and competence. This young man in this cartoon,
Neil,
he,
if I could interrupt, I don't believe you're sharing your screen.
oh, I'm sorry. That's stupid.
You gotta get back to this.
He was just displaying his claim that he makes mistakes.
Yeah, yeah, this was intentional. I was modeling this, right?
There you go. Right. There's gotta be something down here that says Zoom. Yeah. No, you're in the PowerPoint. Hit escape. No,
Has that
you're
been
still
shared
not,
yet?
you're still
No.
not sharing the screen.
Hmm.
Try escape again. See, is there something down here that says Zoom? Is there one of those that says Zoom?
Yeah, right here.
Click on that.
Aha.
And now share screen.
Yeah.
And then click on there, this one. Yeah, 'cause that's what you want.
Very good.
Got it. Okay. Oh my God, my wonderful slides. Here's Mark Lilla's book. Now, here's the point I wanted to make. This young man has won trophies. He's got medals. He's doing something that many of us do. We're really proud of our laurels, and as a result, we're sometimes too proud. So we don't need to read more. We don't need to listen more because we're so competent. Look at that guy. He's really competent. I don't think so. He might be, but that look on his face bothers me because he looks a little too confident to me. And the idea of realizing you make mistakes is instead of those arms wrapped together, we want to have our hands moving toward the person in other people that we are around to signify that we're open to what they have to say. The second apology that I want to make is that what you're about to hear is the preface to what I had given as an agenda. I have a habit of starting projects and then I get involved in them and then I end up writing multiple books before I ever get to the project that I'm trying to really develop. For many years, I have had this urge to write a book, Friendly Critical Thinking. I have 650 pages of notes right now on that book. It's not written. I have written, I'm in the process of writing the third book in preparation for eventually writing a book called Friendly Critical Thinking. So I'm sorry, but I'm probably not going to deliver in the agenda that I gave. I'm going to get close to it, but I'm probably not going to get to it because as I was thinking about it, I kept thinking, oh, but I really need to point this out. And I think it's probably a neurosis of mine. This is a reference to the work that I've been doing now, and I bring it up to indicate that yeah, you're the kind of guy that can't write the book you want to write because you're busy writing other books that introduce this book. And this website is the website that has uh, uh, the work of me and my colleagues called question-based critical thinking. And it's a website that has a, YouTube channel and Instagram and a blog and news about the publications. And it's I hope that in the next 2 years I'll be able to write the book finally, friendly critical thinking, but I don't know, maybe not. Okay, the third, I want to go now to the uh, third apology that I have to make, and it's really very pertinent to what I said about that David Brooks article. I don't feel very good about what educational institutions are doing with respect to critical thinking education. They talk about it a lot in their advertisements, but I don't see much activity that suggests that they think critical thinking is important. When an institution thinks that something's important, it puts money behind it. Let's talk about esports. Big Ten schools get together in arenas and have standings and competitions for e-video. The statistics that I have here, straight from AI, the average Big Ten school spends $400,000 a year on coaching for people who've won e-scholarships. The the um, typical Big Ten school spends $15 million a year on scholarships for video game athletes. That's what an institution does when it's committed to an idea that will allow them to invite and successfully get students to come to their school. So let me give you a personal example of what I'm saying. For 15 years, I taught in an honors program that uses as its signal of importance critical thinking. And in all the brochures, including the ones that are available today, in all the brochures in this honors program at the university where I taught, it's critical thinking, critical thinking, critical thinking, critical thinking, critical thinking. But I taught in that program for all those years. They even used one of my textbooks as their critical thinking textbook. And honestly, I thought almost no critical thinking was being taught. And the reason is that I can't teach more than what I know and have learned. And so we couldn't find faculty who felt comfortable with the skills and dispositions of critical thinking. And so instead, the program has people who are trying to teach critical thinking by giving students a critical thinking book for 2 weeks and then starting to talk about their discipline because that's what they know. They know about biology. They know about communications theory. But when they're asked to teach critical thinking, all they can do is teach, well, they can teach that there's another side. And I don't know if that's more useful than not, because to me, there's not the other side. There's a whole room full of sides that occur because we're concerned about nuance and context, not just whether you're for or against something. So um, this this program that I taught in, I kept asking the dean, who was my friend, can't we give our students a test so that we can see if we really are teaching critical thinking? And his answer was no, because some people will do better than others, and then we won't be able to get anybody to teach the course. no money was being spent on training these faculty. Nobody, their work, such as it was, uh, their work was not part of the recruiting brochure. Um, when I would consult at universities, a lot of times somebody would say to me, where can I go to have a curriculum that addresses critical thinking as a set of, yes, fallacies, yes, knowledge about cognitive biases, yes, knowledge about perception and the inferences we draw from perceptions that are often inaccurate, yes, statistics. Is there such a place that they can go? Maybe you know some place that they can send their teenagers to go to college. I don't. I know some schools where they can have one or two courses where there is some really outstanding critical thinking being taught, but schools are not devoted to critical thinking. Let me try to develop that point a little more. Who's the highest paid state employee in all 50 states? Well, it's not critical thinking teachers. And it's not going to be critical thinking teachers because, at least on the campuses I'm familiar with, except for some informal logic classes and some formal logic classes that I guess you could call critical thinking, these courses exist, but there's no organized curriculum that is trying to encourage critical thinking. Now, go back to David Brooks' essay. If he's even partially right, where's the educational institutions that are trying to resolve this problem by actively teaching critical thinking? I can't think of anything more important than critical thinking. Why aren't they paying attention to it? This is a chart of the highest paid public servants in every state. And you know, if you're having trouble reading it, the only ones that don't have football and basketball coaches are the blue ones. And you know, I don't want to just use money as some kind of a altogether wonderful metric. It's not, but it does signal something. It signals people's devotion to supporting those people who are working hard in a particular area. And it's all about football and basketball. It's not about critical thinking. None of you expected critical thinking to be on any of these states. You know better than that. Okay. Now, I I want to rebrand critical thinking. Why? Folks, people, as I said earlier, they're not lined up to take critical thinking courses. So how do we get students and those people who finance things in higher education, how do we get them to want to pay attention to critical thinking the way we do? And the only thing I can think of is to scare people, to scare them into realizing what it means not to have critical thinking skills that are well honed. So, how do you scare people? How many cults are recruiting members today in the United States? I don't know how in the hell you count these things, but people do. The estimate is 10,000 cults. And 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 these cults want the affection of of you and me. And sometimes they're amazingly bright people in these cults. And you know, it's like, how could you believe any of that? How could you see that person as somebody who you trust your fortunes to? How many scams take place in the marketplace? 30% of people in the estimates that I saw believe that they've been scammed in each year. Cults and scams run from critical thinking. Super Bowl attendance. 72,000 excited fans awaiting the kickoff year after year after year after year. How many students and parents have demonstrated a similar passion for critical thinking? I've, I've never, on any campus I've been on, seen anything approaching the passion that should be invested in critical thinking. We have to scare people, I think, into seeing how many risks that makes us susceptible to as a result of not paying more attention to critical thinking. How many religions are vying for our affection? Most of which have stories about final ends, most of which have creation narratives, and they want us, and they want students. And for any of us to make an intelligent choice among those religions, well, how could you do that without critical thinking skills? I mean, people do all day long, but it's like, no, no. How many lies can a politician in the United States tell during a 4-year period and get reelected? Apparently one. People don't know how to investigate whether something's a lie, whether it's misinformation, whether it's disinformation, how many millions of dollars the Russians are spending trying to convince us to hate one another, trying to teach us that people of a different skin color are causing our country to be lost. When you rebrand, you have to ask the question if you're selling toothpaste or if you're selling critical thinking. And I hope you're not bothered by that language that's basically suggesting that we should pay more attention to rhetoric, to the rhetoric of Quintilian, the art of persuasion by a good person, not just using persuasive techniques because you have them to get somebody to engage in a Ponzi scheme with you, but rather we want to figure out who we want to address. Now, one group that we can address in conversations and that we can address in our teaching is dominators. Primarily men, but sometimes they're imitators among females. At my school, there was a number of people who were really excited about teaching critical thinking because they were students majoring in marketing. And um, these marketing students were eager to learn critical thinking because they thought, oh my God, those give me avenues to how I can manipulate people more effectively to take this drug, to demand of their physician that they have that drug. They wanted to dominate. They wanted to dominate conversation. How many books do you think have the title? I copied, I counted them. How to Win Every Argument. Now, those people tend to love critical thinking because they want to use it for the manipulation of people. They want to be able to sell them anything. Every no is just on the road to yes. And I personally don't want to teach those people, but if I did, I'd want to rebrand critical thinking in a particular way. Self-confident learners, that's another target group. Oh, I wish you've had some experience, at least resembling the experience I had. Twice I went to the Air Force Academy. Twice I went to the Naval Academy. Three times I was invited, and I was so flattered to the Naval War School in Rhode Island. The Naval War College is in part a scenario for the 20 highest ranked officers in the Navy to get together for 3 weeks to have special leadership training. And I was invited multiple times. Oh my gosh. I I know you must have had students like this, but I haven't had very many. These students were the best students. Imagine what it's like when you shake hands with somebody and they say, "Hello, Dr. Browne. I'm Admiral so-and-so, commander of the Mediterranean Fleet." And we just go down the line and I'd be introduced to all these people, the amazing credentials. And they were the most humble. They all took notes. They all asked me questions until I passed out. They were, it's like, as I say, they were the students of my dreams. Well, I don't think we can rebrand devoted to those people because there aren't very many of them. Um, I don't know about you and your colleagues, but I know about me and my colleagues. And my colleagues, they weren't comfortable with conflict. In fact, my colleagues were really anxious around me because they said I asked too many questions. And I hope I did that with civility, but just the fact that I was asking lots of questions about some policy approach they were taking, they they were uncomfortable. Now there are two more on this slide, and these are, in my mind, the people that we most want to try to see as embracing critical thinking with every ounce of their spirit. Those uncomfortable with conflict. I had dozens of students who came to me, very good students, who said, "I'm really glad I learned critical thinking, but I don't think I'd ever use it." And what I was like, why? And they said, it's so mean. An earlier participant in this activity, when he talked about critical thinking and his unease with critical thinking, he said critical thinking was slicing and dicing. Um, uh, I earlier I said how many people do you think wrote books that asked the question, how to win every argument? And a lot of people, the very idea of disagreement, they're uncomfortable with. And the rebranding that I want to encourage takes those people seriously and tries to realize, using a banking metaphor, tries to realize that you have to make a deposit before you can take a withdrawal. And what I mean by that is, in terms of what we're talking about here today, what I mean by that is you have to create an atmosphere where people believe that you're interested in their well-being and not in any way with getting into some kind of a knockdown, drag out fight with them. I've been in a lot of philosophy seminar rooms, and a lot of what I saw, it makes people uncomfortable. It made me uncomfortable because it seemed like it was a sporting event. Those uncomfortable with conflict are an important part of the friendly critical thinking that I want to develop. The same random people Socrates and Agnes Collard tried to speak with. Agnes Collard, I don't know whether you know her or not, she's a favorite philosopher of mine at the University of Chicago. Agnes Collar, when she got her PhD, she spent some time on the steps of a local museum. She wanted to have a conversation with people. She'd ask, would you like to have a philosophical conversation? And they would tolerate her for about two questions, and then they would walk off. You remember from the dialogues how many people Socrates tried to talk with, and they walked off. And one of the groups of people that uh, the rebranding that I'm trying to encourage is just people that live next door, that your neighbors, that you're trying to speak with about something that's going to be potentially uncomfortable with them, but it's a group of it's a group of people that you can win over. You can make those deposits of affection and interest that will enable them to do some potentially uncomfortable thinking, but you have to be skilled in rhetorical arts. I want to, if I have, I don't have the time, but I want to, if you'll permit me for just about 3 or 4 minutes, I want to bring my wife in and I want to show you what I think. These are not, I'm not teaching critical thinking, but what I'm doing is I'm getting ready to teach critical thinking. Nance, come on in here. So what Nancy and I are going to do is I'm going to pretend that this is a podcast, and I've invited this lady, Nancy Kubasek, to the to my podcast, and let me stop the sharing. So this is my wife and co-author, and I'm really glad to see you. I've been wanting to meet you for a long time, and somebody told me that you really like strawberry.
I do.
Ah, look at what I have for you.
Oh my gosh.
Strawberry.
Then,
Yeah.
oh, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I hope you enjoy it.
Oh, I will.
Okay, let's get to work. But before we get to work, what the hell is that?
This is Tiffany, my
It's
dog.
it's Tiffany. It's a grass dog.
Oh, it's not a grass dog at all. It just looks like a grass dog because she has a unique grass-looking coat. She goes with me everywhere.
Does it bark?
No, she's a quiet dog. That's one of
Okay.
her. That's one of her advantages.
Okay.
Thank you for your interest in
Okay.
Tiffany, though.
Okay. Now I really ask you here because I know you have a dislike for democracy.
I do.
And I just want to ask you some questions to try to figure out why you have this very strange position.
Well, primarily because democracies have not been really successful. Look at what they've done with respect to climate change. Nothing. Look at what they're doing with respect to inequality. Nothing.
That's true.
Look at the fact that democracy, one democracy at least, elected as its leader someone who told over 3,000 lies during a 4-year period when he was a leader in the past.
Okay, that's all true. I agree 100%. So I'm on your side in this. But would you agree with me that something is not bad just because it has some negative aspects?
I would. Yeah, I would agree with that.
And do you think that the way you were criticizing democracy, you seem to want me to go along with you and feel that,
That anger.
yeah, but I am angry. I wish the democracy were better. But at the same time, what's the alternative? I mean, what do you have in mind? I want to know.
Well, I was thinking a benign dictator. When I was younger, I read about some countries like, well, Singapore, where at least it seemed as if the people had all their basic needs met. They,
Yeah,
things were run very efficiently. I mean, a
beautiful,
democracy is
beautiful.
inefficient.
Now you keep talking about this, a democracy. I want a democracy where people vote for Marcus Aurelius.
If only he were here.
If only, if only dictators were benign.
Oh, good point. Well,
We must stop. But the point is, I'm like the last thing I would probably say to her in a situation is, do you have a book or a poem or a film or something that I could read or view that would get me closer to your point of view? And and because if if I can read that, I think we can make progress. Okay, that's the conclusion of my talk. I think I got 1/3 through it. Thank you for your patience. You were great.
Well, thank you very much. I open the floor to questions. Mark, and then I think Tyler.
So
Hi,
Neil, you
Mark.
wanted to,
I've read a lot of stuff by Mark.
well, thank you. I actually used one of your textbooks for a number of years.
Well, thank you to
Um,
you.
there you go.
I don't know.
So,
I don't know how you feel, but that book that I think you used was I think I published that in 1972, and I don't know about you, but like now I've gone so far away from the ethos of that book, and I almost wish people didn't know about it, but you know, 12th
well,
editions.
well, it's
Go
any
ahead.
comfort. I can't remember it very well myself, but
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
was it asking the right questions? Was that the
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
was the title? Yeah. Well, but it seems to me you haven't drifted that far from it because um, focusing critical thinking initially on a questioning approach, um, and I have to agree with you. I think that um, uh, I have, for example, I was employing a diver to do some work for me, and it turned out he was quite a right-wing COVID denier person, and I didn't have the wit. I started to argue with him. Then what I should have done, I said, "Why do you think that? You know, and what's your and that's very interesting." As, um, and I can't. I've just tried to quickly look up, but I can't. There is a whole school, a whole approach um, on being persuasive based on starting out with questions, A, and B, the question they start with, and I just can't find this reference, is how certain are you about your view on a scale of
Absolutely.
0 to 10? Well, virtually nobody says whatever the controversial view is 10. So now we've got, well, how come you didn't say 10? So now
Yeah.
you're getting them to focus on their own doubts, whatever they are. It's a very a clever technique, and again, a question-based approach, which seems to be the right way to approach people. Um, and I was on a talk with a bunch of people on a Zoom a couple of months ago, and one of the fellows, a fellow critical thinker, confessed that he's often had arguments with his wife, and he's often wrong. And I said, well, has that changed your attitude when you put your next position forward, knowing, apparently as you do, that you're often wrong? Well, no. um,
Yeah.
uh, anyway, just wanted to, but now my question finally, what is this rebrand? Like you didn't really tell us how we're going to rebrand it. Critical thinking as questioning, which something you even tried years ago. Well, where do you want to go with this rebranding?
Well, first, I don't want to go anywhere that I would consider substantive. I want to take it to some place where I think I can use what I say to lure people students, if I'm a teacher, to lure them into thinking warmly about critical thinking, wanting to encourage others to engage in critical thinking. I mean, critical thinking has so much to offer those of us who are concerned about climate change. Critical thinking has so much to offer when people talk about, uh, you know, there's something called broken arrow. And broken arrow refers to nuclear warheads that are lost. We don't know where they are. They've been lost for decades, and we don't know where they are. We hope that they're not in the hands of non-sovereign entities. That would be a little hope, at least. But when I say rebranding, I mean thinking about things like what communication theorists call our second language. And that is, and I can't do this very well with Zoom, but that is what we do with our hands, what we do with our bodies. I was leaning into Nancy. You know, I was shaking my head like this. I'm trying to get her to open up to the idea that somebody that she disagrees with immensely might be somebody that it's worth having another conversation with. So it's trying to, Mark, I don't smile easily, but when I'm trying to encourage critical thinking, I smile a lot because smiles, Scientific American last month had an article, Why We Like Expressive Faces. And those kinds of things are not in a critical thinking text, but what they are avenues by which we say to people, can you think of the best argument that could be made for the position I'm taking? Now that's a tough question for most people because they're not accustomed to putting themselves in another person's. But that's a skill I learned from mediation. I taught mediation for many years, and one of the route to this, to bringing people together, which is the dream of mediators, the route to this is saying to people, I'm interested in what you have to say, and in order to hear you better, I need you to do things that um, are going to be sometimes uncomfortable. You know, I mean, I feel awful when my students come to me and say, I don't want to use critical thinking. It's mean. I don't like the sound of it. Uh, and that concerns me because we need every recruit we can find. I think incidentally, I think, you know, I don't smile easily. I just force myself to smile. But I do it because people are more likely to like me. And I don't want likes. It's not for that. It's I want them to like me enough to listen to me, to see me as somebody who doesn't want to hurt them, doesn't want to beat them up. I know how, so do you. But I don't want to talk to people and win every argument. That is so embarrassing, that book title. Ah.
Kevin?
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned sort of that no one's really teaching critical thinking across the curriculum, and I kind of agree to that. One diagnosis of that is that people think, oh, I teach critical thinking every second of my courses
Absolutely.
because all thought is critical thinking, and I'm doing that all the time. We don't need critical thinking across the curriculum because we've
Absolutely.
got it. Okay. Um,
Absolutely.
but one, and sort of you kind of asked, well, geez, what would it take to do it right? And I think if I would suggest taking a look at the work of Donald Hatcher and at Baker University, and this was quite a while ago, decade or a half, and he got an NSF grant And what he did was prepare a text and had training sessions for the entire faculty. And the text was accessible enough so that indeed any faculty member could get their head around it. And extensive training, and the entire faculty took their turns at teaching these courses. It was dovetailed into the composition program so that there was a critical thinking course that everyone took, a
Mhm.
critical composition course that everyone took, and upon graduation during senior year, a capstone writing project it was all dovetailed into the same curriculum. And
Mhm.
this was quite successful, although, as you pointed out, it's quite expensive. And so when the NSF grant money petered out, Baker University, which is run on a shoestring, could
Yeah.
not keep it up. But
Right.
for the decade or so that it was up and running, it had its problems with, for example, English teachers who thought Derrida was the paradigm critical thinker. Yeah, there were those kinds of glitches, and Don had to kind of work around them. But it was a really successful program, the only one I think in the U.S. history. And so if you're looking for how to do this and how to do it right, and an extensive, great critical discussion on how to do it and the assessment that was used to show it was working to some
Mhm.
degree. Again, Donald Hatcher and his wide array of publications is really a great source if you want to see
Mhm.
how to do it.
Kevin, I think there are a lot of people who have good ideas to implement, but we don't get the institutional support that would enable us to do what Don did. So, and you said everybody thinks they teach critical thinking. The ambiguity of that word is it's massive.
Yeah, right.
People go, I'm going to do a deep dive. They say, I haven't looked in the last 20 years, so I don't know if this is true now or not, but there's a literature that's called uh, the 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 impacts of college, and it's written primarily by institutional researchers to try to show that universities and colleges are doing so many wonderful things. And I and a colleague were listed as having proved that students learn critical thinking in colleges and universities. And I saw that and I'm like, oh my gosh, I would be testifying for the opposite. And so I read another sentence or two, and they said that we did research that showed that students know after a college experience, they know to ask for the other side, as I said, and they know to say, do you have any evidence? Well, I mean, those are better than not asking, I guess. But like, what good is it if you can say what's the evidence, but then somebody gives you evidence and you have no idea what the difference between statistical significance and social significance is, and and so they know to say, you have any evidence? Then somebody gives them evidence, and then what do? Go, okay. So people are desperate to claim, as you indicated, they're desperate to claim they already teach critical thinking, and that's why they don't need to learn any more about critical thinking. One of the best books in critical thinking literature that I know of was survey research that was done after the California system back in about 2.5 decades ago. Every student was required to take a critical thinking course in the California system, and there was a there was a after that was canceled, there was a research project asking people who taught critical thinking in the California system. Number one, what do you mean by critical thinking? And 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 it's hilarious if it didn't want to make you cry. I mean, they say things like, my students enter my class full of myths. I show them what's wrong with those myths, critical thinking. I'm like, wow, that sounds like a definition of anti-critical thinking to me. It's like, you know what's right and they're wrong and you're fixing them. And I understand a little of that, but like to call that critical thinking. And when the researchers kept asking them question after question after question, what do you mean by critical thinking? It was all over the place. And then a follow-up question was, and what skills do you teach as part of the critical thinking regimen that you encourage? And more than half of them couldn't name two skills. They wouldn't know a cognitive bias from a porcupine.
Yeah, when I during that CT requirement for California, a colleague and I went out to California and discussed various programs and yeah, just heard horror stories like the last day, the last meeting of a literature course, the instructor handed out a 3-sentence paragraph and told the students, okay, find the conclusion, find the two premises. Okay, we're done. We've met our critical thinking requirement because what we've done is argument identification and argument mapping. We're out of here. And oh yeah, I mean, and that's even that instructor got closer than a lot of other professors at that
I was going to
university.
say, yeah, that's better than nothing.
Yeah, I was going to say too, could they do it? I would be very interested in knowing if they
Well,
could do it.
yeah, probably with the instructor's help. So yeah, and you know, it's 3 sentences, so uh, they've got a chance.
I think to that earlier question I was asked, what do I have in mind? I I think we have to do something radical. Even if I didn't know what, I would still say that because where are we headed? Where are we headed when democracy, which I generally feel warm about, democracy elects people who just habitually lie and nothing happens. And we all just wait for the next set of lies. And now all of the sycophants, they see whether they can tell bigger lies.
Well, on that cheerful note, I see that we are at 11 o'clock. Mark has asked you, Neil, if you could supply the reference for your claims about the survey of California faculty critical thinking.
Oh, absolutely. That entire research project is discussed in great detail on a PDF, and I don't know what's the best way to communicate that to the group, or
Well, if you want to, you could send it to me or
I'll
to
do that.
both of
I'll
us.
do I'll do that as soon as
on it.
we conclude.
Very good. And then if any of you want that, you can also email it to me or to Kevin. I'll just drop my email here in the chat so you can
Yeah.
grab it. It's vwarren.
I mean, read it and weep. These are all faculty who teach critical thinking.
Oh, I'm not,
That's what they say.
yeah, I will not be, I'm not surprised. I've talked to a lot of people about critical thinking from different disciplines and yes, it can be illuminating. Okay, thank you, Claude. I will take your email too, so I can do that. Okay.
Thanks, guys.
wonderful.
Yep.
Well, thank you
Thank you
so
much.
much. And have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye. Hi, Frank.